It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. Next up, Brother Ali. He's a rapper based out of Minnesota. There, he's part of the Rhymesayers collective, a label he shares with Aesop Rock, Dilated Peoples, and Atmosphere, among others. For the first part of his career, he focused a lot on making protest rap, speaking truth to power, that kind of thing. His latest record is called All the Beauty in This Whole Life. On it, he focuses on finding the beautiful things in the world, and he does it with a real honesty and openness. Ali talks about his faith a lot. He's been a Muslim since he was 15 years old. He also talks about his albinism, about how having no pigment in his skin presented a ton of totally unique challenges when he was growing up. It's a beautiful record. Ali's a beautiful guy. Let's take a listen to the first track. It's called Pen to Paper.
When I was 13, I met KRS. He put me on the stage, suggested I read up on Malcolm X. Y'all know the rest. Someone's pushing down on my chest. Both my folks got laid to rest. Loved ones wishing me all the best. I'm a ball of stress, yet I digress. I've spent my every hopeless dream.
Brother Ali, welcome back to Bullseye. It's great to get to talk to you.
Thank you so much, man.
I feel like your new album comes at a time when people might be expecting protest music from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder why your album is so much about beauty and love rather than about things you're mad about.
That's a really great question. And I feel like it's a combination of, you know, those being the things that I would like to share, because that's what I feel like is missing to a large degree, or at least is missing from the conversation. Beauty is everywhere. Love is everywhere. Good, you know, beautiful people are everywhere, but they're not being talked about. It's not being focused on right now. And it's so easy that, like, the regime is so outwardly, openly evil that it's really easy to just focus on that. What's perhaps more difficult to focus on is how much beauty there really is. But then also that's been my experience. So, you know, I made some really serious protest music, and then I started realizing, like, how easy it is for the ego to sneak in. You know, and I'm involved in, like, you know, social justice stuff and also spiritual stuff or religious stuff. And in both of those areas, it's really easy to lose track of the ego, and the ego can come in and ruin the whole thing. And you start becoming self-righteous. You start thinking that, you know, not only is this message important, but I'm important. And I experienced that, man. Like, I have a lot of, like, serious ego challenges. And so I got to a point in the activism stuff where I was experiencing despair and jaded kind of like bitterness. And I realized, like, that's completely means that the ego is trying to take over. And so I started going to the Sufi masters of the spirituality in Islam and just sitting with them and, like, how do I get my heart right? Like, I'd love to have some good impact on others or the world or outwardly or whatever, but that's only good. That's not going to work if my heart's not right. And so I went to the doctors of hearts, which are the Sufis, and was like, help me. Like, I'm a mess. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm jacked up and I need help.
Was it hard to do that?
It's hard to know that you need to do it. For me, like, it's difficult to peep that about myself. That, like, oh, I'm not having a bad experience in this because the people aren't giving me what I think I deserve. Is the problem is, like, what do I think I deserve? And how do I really estimate my own, you know, role or worth or whatever? It's just it's a focus on self. And so that's just what my last few years has been like. And when I started making this album, it was before, you know, this angry little man became the leader of the free world. I was just like, man, I'm experiencing so much beauty. That's what I want to share with the world right now. So I started making this album about beauty before all of this stuff. And then, you know, I'm on an independent label, so it takes a long time for the music to come out. And so in the interim, there's, like, these changes in the world, and I'm just, like, so, I feel really good. Like, this is what I feel good that I'm able to offer this to the world.
It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. I'm talking with Brother Ali. His new record, All the Beauty in This Whole Life, is out now. You came to your faith partly through hip-hop, right?
Yeah, definitely. KRS-One told me when I was 13, told me to read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
What were you doing hanging out with KRS-One when you were 13?
He gave a lecture tour at Michigan State University, and I lived in Lansing at that time. And my mom took me. And so my mom, my very, you know, pretty blonde white lady, got to sit in this auditorium full of hip hoppers and Black Power radicals and some academics. And her son, who's like looking at KRS-One like this is the sheikh, like this is dad, and hang on his every word. And then they had a question and answer portion, and so I stepped up and I had bought this book that he did with a journalist named Nelson George called Stop the Violence. And I read this book and I tried to memorize every word. So I stepped up and I said, I memorized every word, not only on your albums, but in this book. And I love you and you're my teacher. And when this is over, would you sign this? And so he brought me on stage, signed my book, talked to me. And he had talked about Malcolm all through his lecture, but he said, read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so it took a long time because I was a kid. I wasn't into reading books. I'm also legally blind, so it takes a long time to read, but this is the book that changed my life.
You have a song on your new album called Pray For Me that has a really beautiful verse about your experience of your albinism when you were a kid and the way that you and your mother managed its impact on your life.
Imagine how my mama felt. Obviously, she wanna offer me some kind of help. Pretty white lady never probably dealt with this particular type of hell. If she dyed my hair blonde, maybe I could blend. Get a better response, maybe even a friend. She took me to the salon, put chemicals in my head. When they took the towel off, it was purple in the end. Lot of money spent just to get me presentable. Message that is sent, the real you ain't acceptable. I know what she meant, what else could she expect to do? That was just the lens that she viewed protection through.
And I wonder if you could tell me, like, how does it change your life when you're a kid that you don't see well and don't have pigment?
Yeah, it's a perfect way to say it. Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of like the defining moment. Like, I think a lot of people that are aware of me are kind of like, what, the video doesn't match the audio. Like, why does this person look like this and is talking like this? And I feel like that story in particular is one that really highlights it, and that my mom saw the cruelty I was experiencing and wanted nothing more than to help me get out of it and help me survive it, and she wants to take it away. She was a dark-haired little girl that was adopted by Norwegians, and so she dyed her hair blonde. And so that's the way that she, conformed and kind of like fit in and, became part of the family. So she said to me, like, if we dye your hair blonde, then you can basically just kind of go about in school and people won't really notice it right away or something, and you can kind of at least have a grace period to try to make some friends. And so we tried to dye my hair blonde. It didn't work because hair dye works with the color in your hair. So my hair turned purple. And then she takes me to this really expensive salon, and they finally figured it out, but it's a freaking science experiment to try to make me look presentable to people. And then I got to go back all the time and get it re-dyed, because what really grows out of my body is my dirty secret that if it were ever exposed, suddenly I'm not acceptable anymore. That's what she did, because that's her way of navigating life. But then I meet, I kind of talk about this Black elder woman that worked at my school, and that's a real person, but she's also like symbolic in my music of all of the people that I've learned from and, eaten in their homes, and people that have just loved me and cared for me and taught me and disciplined me and, made fun of me and fought me and everything in my life. This woman basically was like, I see what you're doing. We have light-skinned Black people that try to pass for white, and they go and they dye their hair. She actually told me Elvis Presley, though, grew up in blues, and he wanted to be a blues man. He didn't want to steal the blues. He wanted to be part of the blues. And he made his hair look like that because he wanted to look like Muddy Waters. Muddy Waters has a perm, though, because he's trying to look more white. And actually, Jimi Hendrix did his hair because he was trying to look like Bob Dylan. And Bob Dylan let his hair grow because he's trying to look like Huey Newton. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this weird kind of thing. And then she said James Brown basically was the poster child for Black is beautiful. And he came out with the afro, and he stopped getting a perm. And he basically said, I'm going to be who I am. I say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. And she basically said, this is how we get home. You learn how to be acceptable to yourself. And that's what Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam were saying. Be acceptable to yourself. He said, at the end of his life, he said, white people can help us, but we don't necessarily want them to join this particular movement because we can't worry about being acceptable to other people until we're acceptable to ourselves. So trying to connect with something that's pre-modern, that reminds us of what the meaning of life is about, is this draw that like I think that we all have. And, and I personally have found that with Islam, but Islam is very insistent on recognizing the other spiritual traditions as being valid, and that every group of people had a prophet, and all of those prophets come from the same creator. And all of those wisdom traditions are to be respected and to be seen as valid. And so that's what I'm on. And I know that the world, a lot of people don't have access to that stuff. And so when I have a mic, it's like, man, I'm just reporting. I see myself as a reporter. That these are the experiences that I've had with these people and with these ideas. And I feel honored to do it. And also I try to be dope as well. Like also I'm trying to be really good at it.
How do you think your experience of whiteness is different because this condition means that you have a sort of literal absence of pigmentation than it might be for me or whatever?
Yeah, well, it's hard to know person to person. But so yeah, I come from a white family and was taught, embraced, basically like the way to navigate life all comes from the Black tradition. And so sometimes people will make assumptions about what my race must be. And there are times where, like, if I'm with a group of Black people and the police are there, then we're Black. They might assume that I'm Black sometimes. And it's hard to know what people are thinking that I am. But then I'm also in intimate spaces with Black people. So like literally living in their homes and eating their food. And, my family was a broken family that was together some of the time and then wasn't. And then both of my parents died young. My mother of cancer and my father of suicide. My grandfather also died of suicide. The men in my family, that's how they die. And so, being in those homes and really at least seeing and having proximity to what that's like. Although my experience is not the Black experience by any stretch of the imagination. And that really taught me also a lot about how race is an experience, but genetics also does have something to do with that. My body doesn't respond to things necessarily the same way that African body does.
Your ex-wife is African American, and your teenage son is African American. You have a song on your new record talking to him about taking care in the way he presents himself to the world for his own safety. It's a thing that you hear a lot about from African American parents, especially with sons, but also with daughters.
Dear Black son, there's people you've never met who fear and hate you for something that you never did. And these people are so self-convinced. Sometimes they pull a trigger, call that self-defense. And in that sad insanity, their fear is realer to them than your humanity. But that's their problem, it's not yours. Listen to your pop for a second. These are the confessions of a father brokenhearted who don't know how to pull his only son out of a target. They lied when they said it was the bottom where you started. You were a king long before them ships departed. You were not defined by anybody else's crimes. You don't need to answer for what happens in their minds. You are not confined by their imaginary lines.
I wonder if you were self-conscious to talk to your son about this in the way that a dad might be self-conscious talking to his daughter about sex. You're having this very charged conversation that has to happen, but you're also doing it across this cultural and experiential boundary that you have lived your whole life as a white man, and your son will live his whole life as a Black man.
Yeah, no, that's really, a rich insight, and it's real. I don't have I don't experience a lot of the hangups that people have with talking about race or with talking about sexuality or with talking about, because of the fact that I've been exposed to so many things, and my ego or identity isn't tied up in being right. I'm very much aware of the fact that this is a system that was created for us. all of us involved in this whole modern world, this whole project of the quote unquote new world, this was done for us. And we bought into it, but we didn't have a whole lot of choice in the matter. I treat that just like anything else, where I show up and I'm very honest about what I've experienced, what I believe to be true, how I really feel. You know, my daughter is 8. She had a coach that is like nice to her in a way that made her uncomfortable. Sometimes he would like pick her up and swing her around and stuff like that. And she's a little Muslim girl, and like she doesn't interact with dudes like that. So it made her feel weird. And she felt bad about the fact that she didn't want to be accusing this man of anything. And so I had a similar talk with my daughter, like, you know, that's part of why men need to be more conscious about the way that they interact with women. You have the right to feel however you feel. And if something makes you uncomfortable, there's no accusation in that. We're not accusing this guy of being a creep. But what we are saying is, if we really value him, then we have to tell him the truth. If we think he's a creep, then we've got to get him away from children. But if we value him and we think that he just doesn't understand, then we have to tell him the truth. And this is why you have a daddy. If you don't want to say this, I'll say it for you. Or I'll help you say it, you know.
You're listening to Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. I'm here with Brother Ali. He's a rapper and an activist. His latest album, All the Beauty in This Whole Life, was released last week.
The Muslim community that you belong to is a primarily African-American community. And I wonder what your experience of the greater community of African-American Muslims that you're substantially connected with has been as Islamophobia has skyrocketed over the last 15 years. And when that Islamophobia has been so deeply connected to basically xenophobia, fear of foreigners and fear of immigrants, and you're part of this community of this very Native American form of Islam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's deep. It's deep. And what's interesting is that when people came from the Muslim world, from the historically Muslim world, so Pakistan, India, the Arab world, a lot of times when they came, first of all, immigration wasn't open to them until after the Civil Rights Bill. So like that bill ushered in the opportunity for them to come at all. So literally African-American people, Black American people are the ones that ushered in that ability for them to come at all. But then America chose the most highly advanced and educated people to come. So you get a lot of people coming in with medical backgrounds, with engineering backgrounds, and et cetera. So these people, and tech backgrounds. So they come in, you know, high mathematics, highly educated. They come in, go to the best schools, and join the upper middle class life. And they largely were very dismissive of African-American Muslims. They didn't see themselves as joining a Muslim community that existed already. And it was an amazing community, still is. But there was a time when they had their own media. Black Muslims had their own media in Muhammad Speaks newspaper, the largest independent newspaper in circulation at that time. They had their own grocery store chain. They had a private school system across America, the Muhammad University of Islam, that became Clara Muhammad School System, a school system. And when people came from Pakistan and when people came from, you know, wherever, they did not join that community. And so they never really bought into that you know, legacy and history of how to live under scrutiny and how to live while you're being targeted, how to live when the whole dominant narrative about you is that you're a 3/5 a human being. How do you do that? And how do you do it maintaining a sense of dignity and style and have a smile on your face and, you know, be the most culturally productive people, creative people in the planet? How do you do that? If they would have come and learned that, then this experience that they're going through now would not be the same, because they would have known and they would have had the opportunity to learn. African American people are basically saying what I've experienced is like, yeah, welcome to the world. Like, welcome to America. This place is set up to divide and conquer people. You know, poor white people are experiencing it too. I think that's the thing that I've been exposed to that I just kind of want to share. So I see myself as a reporter. There's no reason that I've been exposed to all this beauty and then have so many people that I love that it's just an honor for me to try and a big responsibility to try to frame it right and to try to describe it right.
Well, Ali, I know that we could talk forever. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. But it's always great to get to talk to you, friend. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you, man. And you're such a leader, and you're a maven. And I know that people that are really connected to you know that, how much in culture and in, journalism and podcasting and all this stuff, how much of that stuff really comes from you. But anybody that's listening that doesn't know that, you are one of the most important people in this section of the world. I really appreciate it.
Brother Ali, everybody. All the beauty in this whole life is available now. He's also touring. We'll have dates and a link for you to buy the new album on our website. Just go to the Bullseye page on MaximumFun.org. Let's take a listen to one more track off that new record. It's called Own Light.
You're not using your heart for what hearts are for. They've been trying to shut us down our whole life. I thank God for healing. You ain't gotta get me lit, I got my own light. Thank God for listening. Listen, you've been trying to build me up my whole life.